Okay folks, Alan Hamilton here from Pipers Persuasion, and we're packing quite a few interviews into the month of, this is April, isn't it? What date is it in April? Better see. Anybody know the date?
28th.
The 28th April, we'll set for that. And it's 2025, and we're sitting here in Crookston in Glasgow. And beside me here, the interviewee today is Donald Mackay. Donald, a famous chap, the Army, the Strathclyde Police Pipe Band, Scottish Power, and Johnstone. And lots of solo piping and characters. And one of the main one I want to talk about with Donald today is one of my favourite guys, John D. Burgess. I've got very little information on John, so hopefully we'll get a wee bit more on him, Donald, today. So without any further ado, I'm just going to ask Donald, thanks very much for coming here and to Pipers Persuasion and having a wee chat with us. So, Donald, piping. Previous pipers in your family?
No, there's no piping in the family, no. A few bad singers.
Aye.
No.
Is that through drinking?
Most likely. But no,
Where
no
did you start? Where did you start with piping?
I was very fortunate that piping was on offer in school, in primary school.
Aye.
So
what school was that?
That was Bridgend Primary School in Alness, up in Russia.
Okay.
And that's where we come on to talk about John D. He was the school's tutor at the time for Easter Ross. So he covered Alness, Invergordon, Tain, and that sort of area, the academies and high schools and all the feeder primary schools.
What age would he be about that time?
Oh, he'd been late 60s, early 70s. No, late 60s. Yeah. So he'd finished competing by then, but was still obviously heavily involved in judging and stuff like that, which was great.
Had he stopped doing recitals by that time?
He was doing one or two recitals, but just the odd one, not as regular as he had been.
Just for fun, really.
But it all came about in the sort of primary six. It was just the school at the time had quite a good music department, and they offered children various instruments and stuff. So there was all the class being offered the fiddle, piano, trumpet, and I thought, no, I'm not wanting any of that.
No.
And then it came the next week, would anyone like to learn to play the chanter and the bagpipes?
Okay.
So it was from then on that I went downstairs and was met with this man with a tweed jacket, flannels on, shoes highly polished, and this influence that was to be for the next 20 odd years with him, you know. He had a great rapport with kids, and fairly brought quite a few players on, you know, and was quite influential in the school with all the teachers because he had a presence about him, you know.
Yes, aye.
Everyone that knew John D had a story about John D, you know, so...
Aye.
And
a confident chap as well.
Very confident, very intellectual, very knowledgeable, very articulate, you know, very witty, and didn't suffer from...
Did he tell you about his own learning from Willie Ross or anything like that?
Yeah, well, that's when he was in school in Edinburgh, when all that started, when he went up, and there's quite good archive footage of him, you know, with the pipe case going in front of Willie Ross and stuff.
Bruce Hitchens told me about that, and Bruce actually took me up to the old room where Willie Ross had taught in Edinburgh Castle.
Oh, yeah.
And he showed me the curly stairs where John got flung down the stairs with his pipes when John announced he was joining the Cameron Highlanders instead of the Guards, you know.
That's quite ironic actually, because he was quite keen for myself to join the Guards. But then when I was getting older and then on to pipes, into high school, there was a few of us joined the Army Cadets.
Yep.
So that took on a whole new dimension to my piping as well. We ended up doing annual camps and weekends. At the time, the Queensland Highlanders, the regular battalion, was very focused on supporting their sort of cadets and stuff, and they allocated adult instructors. So there was always a sergeant that was posted to the regimental recruiting team, which then part of their job was to run and maintain the cadet pipe band. So
who was that particular time?
So well, the first time when we arrived in high school, there was a few of the guys saying, "Oh, come on, let's join the cadets. We're going away to Ripon." Of course, you had to be 13. I was only 12 at the time, so down to the hall, and the sergeant instructor was going through the forms. I never said a word. Going through the forms, date of birth, and then you sort of realised this boy's not old enough. So then he says, "I'll ask you again what your date of birth is." So I put it a year earlier, and then that's fine. So that was it. So at that sort of time, the first person who was allocated that was Roddy McCourt, who was a fantastic player, really some set of pipes. She was a set of silver and ivory Mackays that he had that were really good, you know. And so it was Roddy McCourt for the first wee while, and then John MacDonald, who's actually a relation to the police MacDonalds in Eust. John MacDonald, and then we had Ali Rees, who was probably the main one latterly, because we spent a lot of time with him and he's quite sort of influential with
I remember recalling his name.
Yeah, so he was great. He was great with all the kids, and he'd didn't have a big band, but he had a few players there that were that would made it worthwhile, you know, were regular attenders and could play a wee bit, and he fairly brought us on, you know, going back to basics and stuff, and really honing in on technique and playing and setting up pipes and stuff. And that time he just finished as pipe major of the 1st Battalion, and I mean his tunes are still being played today, you know, in the top grade.
Yes.
Cayley Lines, Reg Moore, all his tunes are all, you know, still even up to now being played by bands. And that's only a couple of the tunes. I've been on it to sort of publish a book, you know, but there's a lot of tunes. But yeah, there was a lot of good influential players at the time in the cadets.
So okay, back to John Burgess again. He would teach you all the light music, the competition, MSRs and Pibroch as well.
Yes. So he was very keen to.
What sort of Pibrochs did you cover with him?
It was all sort of the ones he would be like sort of silver medal tunes and that as well, you know. So he would.
Any come into mind?
Well, it's, let me see. Well, the sort of first one is the Company's Lament. You know, that was this sort of standard first sort of tune, and then Old Sword, the Wee Spree, Too Long in This Condition, Marcus Evergail's Salute, Melbank's Salute, all these sort of. It was quite interesting. Well, Too Long in This. I got second in the silver medal in '99 with that.
And how did you play that phrase then? Just play it now.
So.
Is there any big tunes that you covered with John?
Sort of big tunes would be Earl Antrim, End the Great Bridge, all these sort of tunes. What other tunes? Mary McLeod, all McLeod Aras's salute. There's a list of that.
So you did that, you covered them anyway.
Yeah, aye.
Good, excellent. Aye. And what, the MSRs, any favourite marches from?
That was the thing. He always liked to sort of try and resurrect a sort of a different sort of tune or whatever, you know. And
yeah.
I was
again, it depends who you're playing in front of.
That's true.
When you're getting away with
That's
that.
true. Aye. And the same with Pibroch. I mean, there's a few things that I think played tunes from Ross's collection and things like that. And there was, you know, you definitely had to make sure that you had the music to say, well, I'm playing at this set.
That style,
So that's where he was good, because he would say, right, what do you think of this? And we would go through the tune or whatever, and then he would say, well, but there are a few people might play it like this, you know, you might hear it being played like that or whatever, you know. So he says, you know, you don't want to steer too way out, especially when you're competing in the sort of silver medal around the games. You want to be, you don't want to be too off the wall, you know, because folk might not know. And he's very vocal, and you know, as soon as I would come away from any Highland games, I had to give him the phone call, you know.
The report.
Hi, John. You know, he'd just pick up the phone and report, and he would want to know who was playing, who was judging, what were the results, and then he would get the whole sort of rundown of what he thought of the, you know, of the judges as well. He was very.
Any marches come to mind?
A few of the sort of standard ones: Clan McCall, Hugh Kennedy, but then there's Captain Campbell, the drummer voice.
I love that
Edinburgh
tune.
City Police
Pipe
Band.
You never hear that played now.
No, it's
Captain Campbell.
Yeah, Willie McCallum plays it quite. He used to play it quite a bit.
You ever hear the Lanark Gathering now?
That's another one, yeah.
It's a great tune as well. That used to be a favourite many decades ago, and nobody plays it now. Except, so that was John teaching these tunes. Any particular stories come to mind about John at all?
No, just lessons with John were never, you know, come in at a certain time and you're away 45 minutes later. You know, it was always, you know, I'd phone him up. This was more latterly when I got a chance to see him out with school, and I was through the army and I was back in Inverness with the recruiting team. You know, I would go through and see him every week, and it would be, you know, are you free this week for a lesson, John? Come through coffee time. That would be 11 o'clock, and that would be me. So I'd come through, I'd be there for 11 o'clock, and it would be 3-4 o'clock before I would be away, you know. Going through different tunes, talking about. He's very good at history of competitions over in Inverness, and talking about all the old, you know.
You know, it'd be terrific for a programme like this.
Oh, absolutely.
And
history. That DVD, there was a sort of slight thing which captured a wee bit of him, but he didn't make any money off that or whatever. You know, it wasn't really ideally planned out.
He was very, very well dressed.
Always a shirt and tie on, always there, shoes polished, and he would always make sure. I mean, that'd be, you know, you'd go in there.
Where did he get all the jackets and all that sort of stuff?
Well, they were all best of tailors in Edinburgh and Glasgow. But even just doing in the lessons, you'd be play your tunes, play that, and he'd say, right, that's you. And then in school, you know, he would even say, we'll see you next week. Get out here, cat! You know. So he's always on at you to.
And the pipes, was it telling you anything about blowing and tone, or what, how did they get around that subject?
Well, he I think he would only do it if you needed it. You know, if he would obviously explain and blowing and the circle of breathing and stuff, and then
the posture with the pipes.
He was very big on posture and stuff like that. Liked, you know, he wasn't a fan of these wee blow pieces and things like that. You know, you had to be shoulders back, the arms up, and your head up. You know, because his thing was, regardless of what you're playing, it's a performance. You know, people are listening, they're judging you. So you know that whole thing of presenting yourself to the audience or adjudicators is a huge thing. It's all about, you know, image as well as
projecting yourself.
Yeah.
Aye.
Yeah. So he was.
Okay. I think we've covered. What's the first competing pipe band you were in?
So the cadet pipe band didn't really compete. Well, never competed, but the cadet band was very good for at that young age when you're thrown in, because there was the military side of it. You just got swept away with the drill and deportment. You know, so that was all part of that, just happened. So you sort of learnt that subconsciously, and I think that's a good grounding for any piper going into a sort of pipe band, that you know you're not there, because you see them now, Stephen standing at the top end of grade 1, and you look round and there's folks standing even with their legs apart, and you're going, you know, have a bit of respect, have a bit of posture about yourself. You know,
absolutely.
So there's a lot of things that you sort of learn as you go through it, but the cadets were very good for that. And then just at this, when I was about 3rd, 4th year, I ended up playing with the Inverness and District Pipe Band. Two of us, himself and one of the other pipers, Sean Morrison, we'd jumped on the bus in Alness and up to Inverness and played with the Inverness and District Pipe Band. That was the first sort of chance competing. They were grade 2 at the time.
I was going to ask you.
So
it's a grade 2 band.
Yeah, it's quite a big
decent
band.
standard.
Decent standard, good band for the area. And that was Pipe Major Willie White, who's now, I think he's over Montrose sort of way.
What decade would that be?
That's the late 80s.
Okay.
So so we were there. The only thing that was with the Inverness and District Pipe Band, they wore the Culloden tartan, which you think, oh, that's very apt for Inverness and stuff, but it's a yellow and purple and black.
I cannot recall
I
it.
apologise to anyone that is fond of that tartan, but it's not for me.
I don't know.
It was just too loud and garish.
I don't know whether.
There's a photo I'll show you of that.
Okay, the army. Tell us how that came about.
So I think it was probably because of the influence from the cadets. You know, been heavily involved with the cadets, and then with and the cadet instructors, Ali Rees at the sort of tail end. You know, sort of pushing us towards. And it was quite funny because John would have probably liked me to join the Scots Guards, doing a thing with, like with Willie Ross and stuff. And then of course he joined the Camerons. He wanted me to join the Guards, and then I ended up joining the Queens and Islanders. So I was looking at the bands at the time and thinking the Scots Guards were very sort of ceremonial at the time, down in London a bit, and a lot of ceremonial stuff. Or the Queen's Own, they were out in Germany at the time. And then looking at the two bands, and I thought, at the time I think there was about 14 members of that band within the current band and on postings that had the Pipe Major certificate. So there was a sort of backlog of people, but I just thought that from where I was and the people that I knew within the band and with playing with cadets, that was where I wanted to end up, playing out there with sort of local people and get a chance to be surrounded by that.
Very good standard. Aye, exactly. Yeah. Was Alistair Gillis there at that time?
Yeah. So, I joined what was called junior leaders at the time. So you left school in 4th year.
Right.
And the way the Scottish division worked things at the time was that they had an intake where they could incorporate all the school leavers leaving in May sort of time at school, and the youngest age somebody leaving at that time was 15-year-old, 8 months. So I joined straight away at 15-year-old, way to junior leaders, which was a sort of year-long training programme, which was very, very good, down in just outside Newcastle. And you were there. They sort of build it as that would be the leaders in the army in the future and stuff. So you did a lot of stuff that would gear you up for your junior NCOs cadres and basic leadership sort of types thing. And as the year progressed, they promoted junior ranks within it, and then the juniors sort of ran the platoons and stuff. And you sort of built up to leaving it in the big parade where it was all the junior leaders that took the parade. There was no adult instructors involved, so ended up doing quite well in that and finished up as a junior colour sergeant at the time, so that was quite an achievement. And then down there, because they had all these guys, they had to keep them busy all the time, and so if people wouldn't get homesick or be sitting idle, they had hobbies twice a week. So you could do anything from go-karting to this or that, but piping and drumming was one of the hobbies, and that's where sort of first got introduced to more people from the Scottish division that were quite influential. You've got Kevin Douglas, who was Gordon Highlanders at the time, he was there for this period. George Sharp as well from Argyles, he was down there. So there, and Michael Gray, who was the sort of latter one who I got on very, very well with, and still keep in touch with Michael today. So
that's a different Michael Gray from the Canadian Michael Gray, so audience don't get confused. This is a different Michael Gray entirely.
Yes. So yeah, they sort of took the hobbies twice a week, and we went up and played together. Played at a few things within the sort of some sergeants' mess dues or officers' mess dues, and just small things about the camps. So they like to keep the sort of Scottish thing alive and playing at various bits and pieces. So that was a whole year. So then, because I was still quite young and the battalion were out in Germany, you had to be a certain age before you could get posted abroad. So I think you had to be 17 and 3 months, but I was still too young. So I got put up to Milton Bridge camp just outside Glencorse, or just up the road from Glencorse Barracks through in Edinburgh. And I was there at the sort of the army school. Well, they had the army school of piping at the castle, but then all the drumming and then the sort of courses were done at Milton Bridge. So you had instructors there that were very good. Rab Burns was the pipe major there at the time. Graham Marr from the Queens and Highlanders, and then DJ McIntyre. That was the first time I got introduced to DJ, and still friends with them today. Great players. So you're there for a period of time, and the onus is there. You've done all your military training, you go up to Milton Bridge, and then you get your sort of piping training. So then you learn all the regimental tunes, duty tunes and stuff. So then when you go to the battalion, you just slot right in. Right. So the method of it all was quite good. But when I was there in the January '91, I think the Argyles at the time were in Northern Ireland, and each of the Scottish Division regiments have got Navy ships affiliated to them, from the area and stuff like that. So in '91, the HMS Campbellton was just commissioned, and this was a frigate / destroyer, one of the big flagship ships of the Navy. So they were going to the West Indies and the Caribbean as part of this NATO fleet. So they always take a piper to play on top of the bridge. Good. And I'll show you some photos of that. And so they're great, absolutely fantastic. And so for 3 months, headed out. We're 100 miles away from Jamaica. And of course it's blue skies and there's dolphins at the side of the ships, and I thought, yes, it's brilliant. And then what happened in '91? First Gulf War kicked off. So they couldn't have a whole naval fleet of warships bombing around the West Indies having a great time when technically their countries are at war in the Gulf. So it was, you could just almost see Jamaica and stuff like that, and then we had to turn round. And then we were on standby in just off the Med. But great to see some great places. Bordeaux and France, Cadiz in Spain, Hamburg in Germany.
Did you land in Bordeaux? And
yeah, we're all in these places.
A beautiful place.
Yeah, lovely. So I would be on top of the bridge playing in. And then once you arrived at all these ports and stuff, there's an American ship, a Canadian ship and stuff like that. So they would always have functions. So they would always request the piper to come and play for guests arriving, and then play a wee set during the proceedings of the evening, and very well looked after.
Fantastic.
Great. But there's a photo I'll show you. There's, of course, they were practicing undercarriage drills or whatever, where they put equipment and sort of anything back and forth. So you'd have two ships at speed, probably, I don't know how many knots, but you know, this is like wartime stuff, so they'd be tramping on and they would have a wire that would be put across so they could put things across. So they said, right, we'll try it with a body, somebody. So of course, the only army guy in the ship, who's going to get hit with that? So they fired me on this pulley. So they tested it. There's a big concrete weight on this wire pulley. So it's all, the ships are going at speed. So you've got the wire which is on a pulley, and you've got half the crew this side pulling, and then it was with the Lübeck, which was a German ship on that side. They're pulling that way, so you can see them pulling this. So the first time this goes across, and it's quite choppy, you know, it's boom, the weight's away into the water and it's getting dragged. And I thought, oh my god. But there's no way I was letting that, I was scared in front of all these Navy guys. So the next minute, and I'm right across and back, just hanging in this, off this wire. So I'll show you that picture as well. So that's
great stuff.
So that was quite interesting. But yeah, there was a lot of good times there before I even got to the battalion. The battalion at the time were out in Germany.
Yeah, did you go to Germany?
Yes, so
whereabouts in Germany?
They were in Munster. So by the time I finished on the Campbellton, came back, the Gulf War had sort of finished. They had their leave, the Queens and Highlanders, and then I joined them the beginning of May after their leave, after the Gulf, so we all come back. So it was myself and a guy from Rossi, actually, we both joined the battalion the same day, Paul Tweedley, and there we were, 2 Pipers, and it was great. That period of time, managed to get the tail end of the battalion and the commanding officers and that looking after their pipe bands, because we were in Germany for a few months, then we came back on a Cape tour, keep Army in the public eye, Cape, that's what they used to call these things. So, and then there was a lot of Gulf War commemorations and celebrations type thing. So we're in London for that, mayor's parades and stuff, and then we'd be up north going all through the towns and stuff and marching through, and then there'd be a company of jocks behind us marching through all the number ones.
Who was the pipe major at that time?
At that time when I arrived out in Munster was Bruce Hitchens.
Bruce, aye, good.
And Alistair was the pipe sergeant. So, but great players out there at the time. You had Big Neil Matheson, Michael Gray, and then sort of Gordon Mackenzie and Ewan Stewart. There was a whole, but even these were sort of promoted people within the band, but there was even just the normal pipers, just jocks. They were great players and really good, you know. And because I think, you know, because you're all from your own areas and stuff, they really look after you when you're away.
Did anybody teach you piping in the army?
Yeah, so there's always somebody to be, and that was one thing about the Queens and Highlanders.
Was it sort of quite informal or?
Informal. There was always, because we were in Germany, we didn't go home every weekend, so you're always. If you went in the beer bar, you were doing some piping and stuff. So there was a lot of people there that were keen on piping and keen on solos. So you would always hear stuff where you'd be playing something. Somebody would always. I was always. You know, people would
make
always
suggestions
and offering support and advice. You know, it was great that way. You know,
discuss new tunes that you could try and all that sort of stuff.
A lot of good composers and stuff that, you know, Jimmy Mackay from
What sort of pipes were you playing?
I had a set of Hardy pipes assigned out in the store when I got there, and also had played for a period of time when I was in the battalion. There was a set of full silver pipes. They were a cracking set. They were
just a regimental set.
Regimental set, yeah. They were an old set of Hendersons, but they were. I think it was Alistair Rees actually that got them done up. They were all cracked and things, so they were needed. But they were all the silver was made of rupees when they were out in India.
Good sight.
You know, the sergeants donated these rupees and they all got melted down to make the sort of silver mines. So a lot of history with those pipes.
Did they sound any good?
Yes, they were very heavy.
Oh, heavy, but the tone's all right.
Yeah. Oh, I got a very good set.
Aye.
Just the sheer weight of them, and a bit of sheepskin bag on top of that, and especially for parades and things where you're standing.
What chanters were they playing at that time?
We had Warnock chanters. It was.
So where we're in the army.
So one of the last sort of things that was, well, a lot of the battalions did was these American tours.
Yeah.
Which were quite good. So we did 3 months. This was all my first year. I thought,
Yeah.
the army can't get better than this. We're touring everywhere, all over the place. And then that September '91, ourselves and the Coldstream Guards did a 3-month tour of America. So I had my 18th birthday in New York.
Goodness.
Still couldn't drink because there's 21 out there. But yeah, so we did, I think it was about 83 cities or something. Started in New York, right the way around, all the way. Different city every day, different show, different progress. But then at that time in Germany, there was a lot of people not very happy with the way the army was going and stuff, and there was a lot of people left at that time. But there was a sort of slight influx of new folk, and then we came back and we had tours in Northern Ireland and stuff and bits and pieces, and then we were posted to Redford and then Catterick and stuff like that. So
any change of pipe major?
yeah, there was. So then we had Bruce Hitchens, and then Alistair Gillis, and then he was up until the amalgamation in '94 with the Gordon Highlanders.
Okay.
So then he continued to be the first pipe major of the Highlanders, and then we had sort of Lewis Barclay, Jimmy Stout, and Sammy Sampson for a while. So yeah, there was quite a turnover years ago in the army. You would get a pipe major that would do quite a long period of time, but the whole system's now changed where you're only there for a couple of years and then they like to move you on and stuff.
Bruce, he went on to become director of the music, the second charge of the piping school in Edinburgh Castle.
Yeah, and he was there when I did my pipe majors course in '95, '96.
Yeah.
So that was a sort of real highlight of the army career, was getting
Who was an overall charge?
That was Gavin Stoddart.
I thought it was Gavin, out of the Scots Guards and all this. And Gavin gave a very good interview as well. He went to his house and very, very good actually. Yeah,
there was what he always said was that if you've got a good course, you do a BBC. If he's got a good course, he's confident to do a BBC recording, and we're lucky that there was a lot of good players at the time. Myself, Alan Johnston, Derek Potter, Peter McFarlane, Andy McGregor. So we did a BBC recording. So it's which he actually played on as well, as did Bruce Hitchens. So it was a great time, great time getting through a lot of tunes as well, and just getting that focus to practice every day, and go through all the stuff.
And again, you'd be covering quite a few Pibrochs there on that course.
Yes, in fact, it was the Earl Antrim that I played for my playoff.
Difficult tune too.
Yeah, big tune.
To bring out the music in it.
And because I'd actually, when I played a wrong note in the Duluth, and Ian McFadgen was on the panel. Ian McFadgen, Norman Gillis, and Hugh McCallum were on the sort of board. So I missed out on the distinction in playing because I went off the tune. So I was a bit miffed at that, because there was a wee while. I think they were dishing it, but the double distinctions. But to play a big tune and play well, and Alan Johnston being on the course with the likes of players like that, they're great, really good players, and really bounced off each other, for bringing each other on, because you can, if you're in that environment doing the same thing every day, you can go quite stale.
Had you changed your bagpipe at that point? In the army course?
Yes, I'd got an old set of Ivory Hendersons, which then done me quite well. They were really, really good. Got them from a actually Duncan Watson, you know, from Aberdeen, his brother,
Aye, yes,
his brother Hugh, who dabbled in. He was a great man for getting hold of old sets of pipes up north and stuff. So
Great stuff.
got the pipes from Hugh Watson, and yeah, they did me really well. But when I finished the pipe majors course, that was the chance that sort of came full circle.
Yeah.
They sent me to the recruiting team,
Okay.
so I went up to Inverness, and I was there for a few years, teaching and doing the cadets. Like I was, you know, like a member of the cadets before, so coming sort of full circle really. So at the time, a great bunch of kids, myself and DJ McIntyre were there. He sort of ran the band, I sort of assisted him, but it was great laugh we had, you know, all over the north, taking kids down to Dingwall every weekend, teaching them and playing and doing various functions and stuff like that, so it was good. And at that time it was a great opportunity. That's where I did a lot of the Highland Games at that time, you know, really, because we had a Land Rover there, and we just put it in the calendar. Mixed bag, to be honest, you know. A lot of I won a few, but placed in most outings, you know. But at that time, all the games, there was less graded competitions, so
That's right.
and a lot of the times when I would be going to a competition, you know, you would probably have likes of Big Neil Matheson, Alistair, you know, so you were there competing against former winners before you're even on the boards, you know, before you even play a note. So
it's difficult.
very difficult, but I mean, great experience, you know, great getting round all these games. And
Of course, when you're up there, you had the opportunity of the likes of Falkirk and stuff like that. Aye, the other
Dundas,
folk wouldn't
Falkirk,
go
yeah.
to. Aye.
And the luxury of having an Army Land Rover to get yourself up and to all these, and of course the youths as well. Great
Did you go to South Uist games?
Yeah. I won the Pembroke at South Uist.
Great games out in the Mackay there.
Yeah.
Terrific games.
The few times I was out there, I managed to hit it right, where you had North Uist games on the Wednesday, South Uist on the Wednesday. So North Uist on the Tuesday, South Uist on the Wednesday, and then the Highlands and Islands Young Pipe of the Year on the Thursday. So you could hit the three of them.
Aye.
You know, that was always great.
Aye.
I won the Pembroke out there in '96, was it? You know, it was good. And that's where I first got friendly with Stuart Liddell and Scott Drummond and all these guys. We're all the same age, so we're all hitting off each other and having a good crack at the games, and then obviously at the Cayley's and entertaining at night.
Right, the City of Glasgow Police Band under Ronnie Laurie did these games in 1969. Went up to, at that particular time, we sailed up from Oban right across the Minch to Barra and go off at Castle Bay, and I'm not going to digress what happened there, big long stories about that, but we did the South Uist games first, lashing the rain, miserable day. Next day it was North Uist games, bright sunshine, lovely warm day, no rest. And Angus MacDonald says, "Actually, shit, that's what we have in North Uist, you know." So, he was from North Uist, you know. And with John McCormick and all these other guys who did South Uist sort of
full number ones into feather bonnets.
Oh, aye. And then it was on the boat again for the Tobermory games on Thursday.
Oh.
That was quite a gig, you know. Come back and
the Army used to be quite supporters of that. There was a Sergeant Major that worked out of Stirling recruiting office, Argyll Sergeant Major, Marshall his name was, and he was always keen. He took a lift of Pipers to Inverary, Lust, Tobermory, and they used to be sort of like that.
That's right.
Great, put up and all our food and accommodation paid for. And it was a great team. The first time I was there, I was still in the juniors actually. It was myself and Michael Gray came up from Newcastle. I was still doing the junior leaders at the time, taken up, and that's first time sort of met Alistair Gillis, Gordon Walker, Paul Warren, Kenny Moyer from the Gordons. There was a right good team of Army Pipers, and as long as you played in regimental dress. That was the whole part of it, to promote
Aye,
the army,
just promote
promote
the
army
army,
piping,
aye,
you know.
aye.
So Brian Donaldson and that would be there and stuff, you know. So you're,
Oh,
you know,
aye.
immaculate in his guards kit, you know.
Just to explain to the audience here, it was the first week, what they call the Glasgow Fair, was second fortnight in July, and as Donald's explained, you got Inverary, Luss and Tobermory, but coincidentally the exact same days was the games at Euston come back down for Tobermory, so that's how it kind of worked, and that was a clash. You either went Eust or you went to Inverary, sort of thing.
I think it's still kind of like that.
Still that sort of stuff going on. But very, very interesting week to be piping and all the rest. So what happened? You're in the army many years?
So I joined in 1989, 15-year-old, but your time doesn't start till you're 18.
Aye.
Your colour service, as they call it.
Okay.
You know, so it was sort of 9 years, 9 years colour service. So about 11, just over 11 years.
Okay.
So at that time, and that's where, you know, you're coming to your halfway point. Do you stay in and make it the full career, or do you try something else? And at the time, I'd just come back from the recruiting team, and that was a thing about the army. You know, you were, especially as married couples, you know, there's a lot of separation and stuff, you know, because the battalions are all busy, they're all on operations or they're on exercise, but the pipe bands, they do that as well. But when they come back, the regular troops, they just go to in-camp training and they're home every night. But when they come back, then there's an Edinburgh tattoo or there's a Cape, so the Marigas are away again. You know, so there's a lot of...
You're not really at home.
No. So I thought, well, for a bit of stability and that as well.
So what year did you join the police then?
So that was April 2001. I joined the police.
Goodness sake. I'd retired in 1995. It's funny that, isn't it? I'm actually 60 years away past on the 5th of April from joining the police in 1965.
Yes. We're all envy of you guys that are still hammering the pension. That's all my aim is to be like you.
I keep paying into it, as I say, you know. Right, that's great. So you joined in, and where were you initially posted to?
I was in Cranston Hill in the city centre.
Yes, yeah.
Just down
Aye.
bottom of Burgess Street there from the Park Bar. Many folk will know that.
Now closed.
Now closed. It's a bit. It's a sorry state.
That was a famous police office. When I was in the CID, collated quite a few murders from Cranston Hill Police Office. So a lot of ghosts in that building, you know.
Yeah. But a great office to start off.
Aye. So 2 years probationary period, and then posted to the band.
Yeah. So then moved up over to Stewart Street where the band were at the time. So it was, when I joined, it was Ian Plunkett that was the pipe major.
Aye.
But by the time I got to joining the band unit as such, it was Jimmy Wark.
Jimmy Wark, yeah.
So
good pipe major, Jimmy.
Oh, aye, very good, very good. Was a very good man at sort of just drilling it into you, just play through the stuff, you know. And
and he loved to cut out the variables, as he said. So there's Gore-Tex bag, the plastic reeds, and nothing says that everything can go wrong. So you try to shut down all the variables, you know. And it's all right. If you take chances, sometimes you win prizes. But he did win prizes. A smashing guy. Never really changed over the years either, you know. Always time to have a conversation with everybody getting along there. So Jimmy retired from the police, and the pipe major's job was up for grabs. What happened there?
I mean, I'd been in the band just nearly 4 years by then, and I was happy enough with my lot, really, just doing that. But then as it became more Jimmy's leaving, the replacement, everyone thought was going to fall to Gavin Walker, and but then there was a few people saying, oh well, I think maybe you should, and I thought, didn't really think about it, but the more people within the band said, no, you know, so I didn't really say or do anything. It just sort of evolved until it came to the bit where we're looking at who's going to be taking over from Jimmy. And I've got a lot of time for Gavin, you know, good friends and stuff, so that it's never good when you're pitched against somebody like that, you know, and so there was that everyone in the band had to vote of who they would like, you know, so there was so I ended up winning that vote and taking over, you know, and it was quite initially a very daunting sort of position and place to be in, you know, because there's always a few people that would always like to have been pipe major, and would
to explain to the audience, it's the worst job in piping.
Well, when you're taking over such a high profile
the worst
band.
job in piping. I remember even nobody like Angus McDonald's pipe major then. We didn't like what Ronnie was doing ultimately, though he'd won the champion of champions and he won everything else, and not the worlds. Muirheads was in the top every time that came up for grabs, but he won everything else. Still, they wanted him out. Ian McLaren was interim pipe major for a wee while, and there was still folk away by. Nobody's ever satisfied with a pipe major in the police pipe band, and that's just history, that's the way it's going. And there was usual complaints with Jimmy, Donald, Don, Ewan, Duncan, so it goes on and on and on. It's just a bad job.
No, but what was quite good about it was when I took over the band, really in pipe band world, who the hell was Donald Mackay? You type thing, you know. So I had to really sort of focus and stuff, and I did a lot of thinking and where the band was, what we were doing, and what we could do. You know, we were a very good band. We had a good drum corps, and I got on well with Eric Ward. So that was going to go. So it was trying. Why were we not? We were getting fourth, fifth, and sixth all the time. How, you know? So there was a difference in our sound. So the first thing we sort of did was we're going to sheepskin bags to get that depth in the sound again. And so we're challenging not only with the playing but with the sound. Then there was McCallum's at the time. Were tinkering with a sort of new chanter. And I had a sort of shot of that, and actually.
I think that was a Mark II chanter at that time.
And I played it, I had got it going, I thought, this is quite good, this is really good, this. And I played it at Jimmy Walker's retirement do. And Ian McClellan says, oh, what are you doing chanter wise and stuff? He was just quizzing me about stuff, and I says, I'm actually that there. And he went, well, you're not go far wrong with that. You know, so that was the sort of rubber stamp for me, getting my own instrument to a standard where I just had to replicate. So yeah, we did not bad.
Did you go cane with the drones? Or was it a mixture? Just depending who the folk were?
There's a lot of cane bass drones. But there's a lot of people they think they know how to work cane.
They can't manage it.
No, and the thing is, what I wanted to do was eradicate the variables, was that. So if you're not one about drones,
don't want to introduce hassle.
So it was always a case of, we'll try this, and then see how that works, try something else, you know. So that drones at the time, as long as, and it was John D that always said to me, he said, as long as, you know, the bag strikes in, they stay steady, tune well, and sound great, who can see through the stocks? You know, so and that still stands by me to this day, even with Johnstone, that if we get the best of that instrument, you know, I'm not putting pressure on somebody by giving them an added pressure of trying to play cane drones.
So you'd quite a few good pipers in the band at that time.
We did, and I was very lucky, and I think that's what.
Did Stuart join you?
Stuart McCallum. But even within the band, with obviously the Walker brothers, Neil Smith, Bill Geddes.
Aye.
You know, there's about 6 of us that were in the A grades, you know,
Aye.
so with quite a strong pipe corps. And then you had other pipers who were dyed in the wool, been there for years, that could stand and blow tone,
Yeah.
you know, put a foot wrong, and Donald McKillop and all these
Yeah.
guys. You know, so when you've got the talent of players that can play again with augmented
band
by
players.
good band players,
Aye.
you know, you're on to something,
Aye.
you know.
Aye. And
And I was lucky too with the, you know, with Duncan Nicholson there and Don Bradford. They were, you know, composers and arranging stuff. So you've just got to, you know.
Neil Smith did a couple of
That's right,
tunes for
yeah,
you as well.
that's right,
Very
aye.
good composer.
Yeah. Yeah, the Alison MacLean of Groggery, that was one of his
Difficult one.
very difficult, and managed to.
A difficult opener, but it was a lovely tune.
Yeah.
But, that was after his wife.
That's right, yeah.
Aye.
That's right, yeah.
Good composer, as you say.
Yeah, Don Bradford was
Aye.
firing out hornpipes that were just
Aye.
crackers at the time, you know.
Amazing.
So no, it was initially there. It was a right good team, and then we went on. So I took over in that October 2004. We went out the next year, and there was also other wee things that I tried to do to make sure that, well, this is a different band. This is so. Remember, I went to the Blue Sox. That was the first band that year to come out with the navy blue socks.
That's right. Aye.
Just to get that change of image and changes, so that it was like, this is something different here. But that was something just to try and to be different. So that our first outing, actually, I think we were up in Oban. We did the Highlands and Islands Festival. We
Remember
played
that? Aye, paraded through the street and all
through the
that.
street.
That was good. That.
Aye, that was a good weekend, and then it was just straight into the competitions, and it's always daunting. It's certainly when you're taking over a band of that stature, you know, because you think you're doing, you know, what you're doing is right, but until you start getting results or momentum with that, you just don't know. And it wasn't until I think we were in Pitlochry, and the Simon Fraser University Pipe Band were across at that one, and they were trialling out a new plastic nail chanter, which Terry will forgive me for saying, I don't think it went their way, you know, and it wasn't as big a success as they thought, and I don't think they played it after that. But anyway, the point there was we would come on right after them, so they had played, and they were all, because it was great having the SFU across, you know, for another major apart from the Worlds. So there was a good hype about the competition and hype about the band, and then we came on after them, and we had a really cracking run in MSR, and played really well, and it was coming off. Richard Parks, Rob Matheson and Terry Tully were standing there, and Rob Matheson said to me, if that doesn't win the day, there's something far wrong. So we're second. But there was controversy there as well, because there was we had a first, 7th, 2nd and 1st, I think.
So who put you out?
It was Bob Shepherd that put his 7th.
Aye,
Shepherd, very, very good man, and terrific knowledge and everything else. And he could articulate the hell out of what he was on about all the time, and he'd win every argument hands down if it was a debate about a subject. But I had the distinct impression every time Shepherd was judging, he had in for the Polish band, and he was going to call the feet away from it, and I would say, who's judging these, Shepherd? And that was just my opinion, and allowed to express it, and I did express it. But my God, Shepherd, he articulated it. I don't know what it was. His knowledge, his opinion, but music and everything else seemed to. He didn't think that Poles were able to do what he wanted to hear, and it was quite consistent. We didn't get a result. I don't recall him ever giving us a result over all the years
and he'd been judging for years long before you arrived in the scene.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So that was quite a sore one that day. But actually,
Aye.
and I sort of stuck with me. But actually, when I became an adjudicator as well, and he was part of the training programme, I actually got on really well with him and spent a lot.
You would
spent a lot-
agree with what I said
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Aye.
So, and actually, I spent a lot of time with him
Aye.
during the adjudication training process, and actually got on quite well with him. And it
Aye.
was a great time, and I enjoyed that as well.
Aye.
But that was us in 2005 there, and I thought, right, we're now starting to this is coming together,
Uh-huh.
and then out the following year, and bang, we won the European Championships at Inverclyde,
Yeah.
and that was I think quite an emotional day for everyone, because it was like, right, and everyone was keen, everyone was focusing, everyone was going in the right direction, we're all going there. And although we'd won the championship with Jimmy in 2003,
Aye.
this was like, right, we're starting
Aye.
to produce stuff. So we won the major in 2006 in Inverclyde, and then we won Cowell that
Mhm.
year as well. So
Mhm.
then we're not a flash in the pan now,
No.
we're starting to do stuff. So that was another sort of cement. And then the following year, in 2007, won the Scottish up at Inverness.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another good time. But the
I
times
remember that one
yeah,
in Inverness. It
it was
was quite a dull
lashing.
day.
It was lashing rain now.
Aye.
Just a terrible day.
Aye.
I think there's one recording of it somewhere which is horrendous, and I don't think any band really played well that day. But that's where I think the police bands come in. We certainly that police band, because we did a lot of stuff, and probably with Jimmy as well, that trained into us just to play to the end and
Yeah.
do all this, and we're well drilled and
But you
stamina.
were used
was no
to
issue.
playing outside a lot more than other bands.
Aye, so we did a lot
And
of-
so your entrance could accommodate the bad weather to a greater extent than other bands who practice indoors and then just come out and play in the open.
Aye.
You know.
Yeah.
You did that was the Scottish, and what happened after that?
So it's continued on, and then just
You were getting seconds and thirds and stuff like that.
aye, yeah. We're still quite consistent. We're still sort of challenging, but just never made it on the worlds for that. Just
Aye.
to break into that, or to win it, or to get that top three. But we were contenders, which was,
Aye, you never
which was
got
good.
below fourth.
no.
Aye.
So it was,
Fourth was a bad day actually.
yeah.
Aye.
But what helped at the time was we had Eric there, and they were, the cracking drum corps at the time,
Yeah.
great bunch of guys, and they were winning championships. So,
They were winning drumming.
So
Aye.
if you've got a drum corps that's winning or not far off winning,
Aye.
and you're winning or not far, the whole thing's coming together. So you're
How about the
challenge
ensemble things though? How?
no, we're there or thereabouts as well.
Aye.
It was good, and Eric was good for that. If there was any tunes, he'd have his own ideas with a lot of stuff. But if there was a part of a tune which was maybe quite technical for us,
Mhm.
I'd say, well, don't just run over that. We need listen. That's difficult for us to play,
Aye.
and we can play it well. So I want that to heat. So can you do
Lie
better?
off just a wee
Aye,
bit. Aye.
I'll do something before that's going to
Yeah,
enhance
and-
what we're doing there,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
come out of it. So then, as a whole, the listener's been drawn to that technical
Okay.
passage or something, and he was very good at things like that.
Good. Excellent.
And at that time, that's when I started going through the process for the adjudication, the
Aye.
pipe band adjudicating things. So it was actually myself and Big Donald McPhee, we still laugh about it today, because
Aye.
it took us actually about 10 years. And I started it actually when I was still in my probation at Cranston Hill. I was coming off night shifts and going to the Sunday
Aye.
RSPBA classes for the elementary, intermediate, advanced, and we were there every week. But just the way the course was run, as I say, it took us, and we still laugh about it, 10 years to get through from the elementary course to the
Journal acceptance.
Aye, so we laugh at that, but it was great with Annie Grant and stuff like that,
Yeah,
teaching
yeah.
us sitting there with the bairns doing the monotone exercises on the Sunday mornings. And Jimmy Wark was heavily involved in that as well. He was very good. And then actually the advanced course that we did, that was the last ever RSPB advanced course.
Okay.
And that was Jimmy that took us on that. It was 21 Sundays or something over in Barhead it was at the ex-servicemen's club. And that's where it was myself, Tom Bradford, Big Donald and young Keith Bowes, Ian MacDonald, another piper from Paisley, stuff. So quite 6 or 7 of us on it, but it was quite interesting because it all moved into the PDQB type thing and whole different process. So it was nice to say that I'd done the last official advanced course of the RSPB. There's a photo of that somewhere as well, which was quite good. So yeah.
So anything else about the police band before we move on? Because I've still got other stuff to cover here.
So just with the change of pipe major and stuff, there was obviously we were out in Australia at the time, and there was change in leadership and things going on, and just there was definitely a different focus coming to the band, and a lot of people were throwing warning signs up. This is this isn't right, or that isn't right, and there was an awful lot of political stuff for the police, because then there was we're going to get rid of the band unit, which we were at the time. So there was a whole host of stuff going on that just made the whole place a bit unsettled. So ended up stepping away from that, and there's reasons for, and everyone knows the story, but the right story. But just the pressures of all that, I thought, the best thing to do if you're not happy is vote with your feet. It was quite good at the time, because I'd actually done a course within the police, and then that opened up an opportunity for another job. So at the time of the band unit, when it was being, they were going to get rid of folk, and everyone was going to wherever. I was already in a post which was, in the community safety department as the counter-terrorism liaison officer, which then got me into that role, which I'd always, if I hadn't been piping in the police, that would have been
the role you got there.